Well, we have David Longager with us today. Josh is back in the studio, and this is Pendulum Podcast. David, I want to talk about a couple things. A little bit of RFK. He's not confirmed yet, but I suspect it today.
I hope they're gonna pass it. It's been a little bit nerve wracking watching some of the video clips of it and things that are happening there. Some of the questions and accusations that are being thrown out, but I think he will make it through for the confirmation, which is going to be great. I'm looking forward to see what kind of ideas that he's going to implement for our healthcare in general.
Yeah, I think a lot of changes are coming.
Yes.
We're going to cover RFK. We're going to cover a little bit of vax, a little bit of how eggs are associated with the vaccines. You texted me yesterday about that, and I had no idea that almost all vaccines are associated with eggs or made with eggs or something.
And our biggest ones are the flu vaccines, which is huge. And it's going on the CDC website. It's estimating, how many millions of eggs it takes just for every season for the flu vaccine. And you start thinking about that. Everybody was questioning, the price of eggs, it's because they had to kill off so many chickens because of the avian flu. Things are happening there. But why hasn't the price of chicken itself actually gone up right now? We're still seeing that in a relative price range. It's all the eggs that have exponentially increased dramatically over a short period of time. But if they're killing all the chickens, then why isn't it the chicken prices also going through the roof?
That's a good question. We'll dive into that a little bit. Yeah, you mentioned the flu. We'll mention economic factors. And speaking of economic factors, at the end of this thing, we're going to talk a little bit about crypto and maybe what it's doing, what the future of it is. Is the U.S. looking at starting a Fed coin? So maybe we can start Josh off with the, kind of where do you stand on the RFK, and have you watched any of the confirmation hearings?
I have watched the confirmation hearings, and I like RFK. I'm excited by him. I'm not in terms of the sort of health conspiracies. Some of the conspiracies that he has been lopped in with, I'm not sure how true they are or not, but certain things like that. Big pharma and the fast food industry are basically conspiring to make people sick so they can treat them. I've not done the deep dive on that. I have some basic instinct that that's very probably true, late stage capitalism and all that good stuff. But I'm liking him. I'm liking his energy. I'm liking his vibe. When he first came on the scene in this term, I remember thinking like The Voice, man, like that's gonna kill him. That's his biggest weakness, but it actually kind of works. There's something kind of endearing about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. At the end of the day, he's a Kennedy, man.
Exactly.
There's a lot that could go wrong, and still he would end up in somewhere in the inner circle of any administration almost. I like his response when one of the senators asked him about is he a conspiracy theory, kind of threw that at him. His comeback was essentially that's a pejorative that people throw at me, and I like that. I like that. A lot of these nominees have a little bit of a backbone to kind of take a shot back at those that are sending questions their way.
And it's about time that we have these nominees that are coming in and not just following the same old rhetoric and cowing down to whatever's put out to them. I actually like to see somebody out there thinking, having a different type of discussion and really coming up with a different idea. It may not be 100% right. It may not be 100% wrong, but at least it's a different narrative from what it's constantly been, which obviously has not been working.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a Trump dream team that he's built between RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, bringing over some of those Democrats that we touched on some of the previous podcasts. This is the you could say the Miami Heat of administrations, and they got a little backbone. I'm happy for it, looking forward to it. Anything else on RFK nomination before we jump headfirst into eggs and vaccines? Like that's just blowing my mind. Like I guess now that I think about it, there was this big push about using stem cells and vaccines to create them and all this. And I think about eggs, and it's like, well, is that like an unlimited stem cell type setup? Before I let David explain it, Josh, eggs and vaccines.
Well, when you texted me that you were talking with David about this topic, and I've never heard this before. I had no idea that there was that connection. And talking to David a little bit before the show, and when he was kind of going through his intro to the topics we're talking about today, this is all stuff I'm hearing for the first time. And I'm very intrigued to know, you kind of, I don't want to jump the gun here, but you brought up a question about why has the prices of chicken gone up, or sorry, the price of eggs gone up, but the price of chicken has not. And I'm kind of chomping at the bit to find out why that is, you know?
Well, it's a great question, and I don't know why more people are not asking this. And I'm assuming it's just because they are also not aware that most of the vaccines, especially flu vaccines in particular, are primarily made by eggs. And it takes millions, literally millions of eggs every flu season to produce enough vaccines to create these. And when I say millions, we're talking like 100 million eggs a year for making these vaccines. So you stop and think about that. If we are reducing the chicken population because of the avian flu, which also, by the way, is made with eggs to vaccinate the chickens, which is really interesting.
A little bit of
I know that
catch-22 cannibalism there.
Which do you want to take on there? But yeah, it's crazy the amount of eggs, and this is just in the United States. This is not even considering the worldwide population, how many is being used for that, which, I mean, I think to some extent we do need certain vaccines, but how much are we actually going overboard with vaccines, and how much is that has been and is being pushed by the National Institute of Health and the World Health Order and things like that. So we start getting into a whole lot of other dynamics there going on as well. And when I've actually done some of the research, I've actually gone on directly to the CDC website to pull some of these facts, and that's where I'm finding them. So I'm not just relying on certain news sources that have been reporting on it, which they are, but I've pulled information right from the CDC to show these type of things. Another interesting thing was when I was doing some comparison, our flu rates for the 24-25 flu season are spiking. Right now, in the last decade, we are at the third highest level for the flu of people being hospitalized for cases of it in over a decade, which makes me question what's going on now that we're having so many of these cases and we're only halfway through the flu season. So are we going to surpass the entire decade or longer of flu cases this year?
Well, I think
what's the cause of that, though? I'd like to know more correlation of what's going on and why. Is there something triggering that now all of a sudden? Is it something that was supposedly related to COVID? Are we now more susceptible to the flu?
That's what I was going to ask. I mean, the last 4 or 5 years could be kind of explained through COVID and the funding that hospitals have been getting for, said cases. But I guess if the funding goes away, they kind of file it under a different.
And that was also interesting enough that during the 2021 and 2022 flu season was one of the lowest seasons ever for flu cases in over a decade, which also made me question right there too. That was during the time of the pandemic when everybody was getting paid for COVID cases, but yet nobody had the flu that season. So what happened there?
Well, if I could add, because I think we're kind of answering our own question. I think we're all on the same page that during COVID, if you had, they were fudging the numbers. If you had COVID and died of a heart attack, well, you died of COVID on paper. And like you said, as you implied, the number of flu cases went dramatically down, and COVID obviously went up. So I think they were just diagnosing the flu as COVID and whatnot. My question is, you mentioned that the amount of cases going on right now has skyrocketed. Is that compared to the COVID era or pre-COVID era?
It is over a collective of over a decade period. So
Okay.
every year was reported for the flu season. And right now we're at the third highest level and we're only halfway through the season.
I see. Okay. So this is not simply like the fudged COVID numbers getting back to
No, this is
baseline.
going
There is
back
something
to like
else.
2012, 2013.
Okay.
So yeah, we're seeing an interesting time with that, which I'm going to be.
So a little bit curious. I know this is kind of a curveball here. Over in Myrtle Beach, they've been reporting on fog and just kind of taking over Twitter. And I've seen on, not Twitter, but TikTok and Facebook, a little bit of conspiracy here for you. The said fog has been like particle-y, kind of, that they're kind of throwing towards the vaccines and bacteria that they're floating through the air. Maybe some souped up chemtrails
and
or
actually,
something.
I would love to know about that myself because of all of the different cases that are being reported. Is it coming from a foreign source? Is there something being put out there right now or has been put out there in the 24 season that is leading up to a whole lot more of these cases? Where is it all of a sudden coming from? I would love to know some more answers. And I think with RFK coming in, because he does tend to ask a lot of questions and put some different narrative out there, I think it is going to open up a whole different dialogue for our health in general. And when things like this does happen, I think he's not going to be afraid to step up and ask the tough questions that we need to hear. We need to know about this. What is actually going on in this country?
Do you think he'll? I mean, obviously he's questionable on some vaccines. He's not. I think he said himself he's not entirely anti-vax, but I guess with Trump, pushing through warp speed and kind of proud of that, he's bragged about that a few times. Do you think him and RFK might clash heads a little bit on moving forward on vaccinations across the board, whether that's for children or flu or COVID or whatever else they come up with in the next year or so?
On vaccinations, I personally don't think so. I don't think I've not seen anything. I know RFK's position pretty well enough, and I think Trump is kind of indifferent to this topic. I mean, he likes to accredit himself for getting the COVID vaccine out, but I think he only cares about that in the sense that it makes him look good, not because he's actually passionate about the COVID vaccine. So I've not seen anything from the two of them that would make me think outright there's a upcoming conflict. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think Trump is going to try to keep RFK in line, and if RFK wants to take the vaccine reign, I think he'll give it to him. I do think he needs to stay within the health field, that very narrow lane that he has been given. I think he needs to stay within there because as a Kennedy, he's a little bit outside of the border on some of the other issues.
Sure.
And I could definitely see that point, but I'm also interested to see how he is going to lead us with our healthcare in general. I don't think he's 100% against vaccines totally as well. I think he does see benefit of some of them, but he also tends to question more so, is there going to be side effects or prolonged long-term effects from these vaccines? It's not just going to be, well, let's just give everybody this and see what the outcome is going to be. I think he's actually going to take the time and wants to see real results from it, not just some, well, this looks good today from Big Pharma, so let's just go with it.
Well, let's say RFK does kind of tamp down on the vaccines a little bit. Do we see egg prices go down?
I would hope so.
What's the relation? What's the relation between eggs and economy and the vaccines?
Well,
in
it's
this
really
aspect?
interesting to see that because the eggs that are used, almost all of our vaccines are based or use an egg base to create the vaccines. It's an old technology that goes back more than 70 years since this was actually created, which also makes us question, in all this time, if Big Pharma has been working on all these miracle drugs, why haven't they created a different base or way to make all these vaccines without having to rely on a source that can be tainted or depleted, that they can't keep up with making enough vaccines? So I really question what the basis is for that, and not trying to find something different. They are slowly coming up with some different sources for some of the vaccines, especially since some people do have allergies to eggs or egg-based products, so they can't use those. But not enough research has been done.
Would you say the mRNA was not an attempt at something to that effect?
To an extent, but I think there's too much money passing somewhere that it just does not interest them enough to move a different direction forward.
Yeah. There's enough money flowing.
Follow the money trail on everything. Follow the money trail, and that will tell you more answers than what you needed to know.
So you said that they use eggs a lot, and that this technology is 70 years old. What in the eggs is used? Is it the like the developmental stem cells? You kind of mentioned that, Zeb, a second ago or a few minutes ago.
Most of it is the albumin, the white of the egg, that is used from the knowledge that is put out there. The virus is put into it has to be a fertilized egg. So that does make a difference, but it goes into the albumin, or the white, for the virus to grow for so many days incubation time, and then it is basically killed off or diluted to where it's not a powerful virus. That's where we get the vaccine from.
Okay, I see.
How many eggs do you think the pharma industry goes through?
It's estimated for the United States about 100 million eggs per year.
How much of that is, I guess compared to like consumption, like regular consumption? If I'm making scrambled eggs in the morning, I can't scramble but so many. I can't scramble but so many eggs and eat them. I mean, 100 million is not a small number.
It takes so much in the eggs to make a single dose of that vaccine, though, that it's not like just one drop from the egg is making a dose. It's so many eggs to make a complete dose of the vaccine.
And that's just standard vaccine technology across the board, whether that's flu, I guess, excluding mRNA.
There's other vaccines that are made from that, but the primary one is the flu.
Like when I go take the baby to a hospital or the pediatrics, and he gets 18 billion shots.
Correct. A lot of the measles, mumps, rubella, your common vaccines, those are all egg based, unless they're using
that's a lot, man.
The technology that do not use the eggs, which, like I said, they're not advancing to a huge amount, but they are using it in some cases, especially for people that have the allergies to eggs or egg based products and things like that. But why haven't we advanced more on that side to get away from that? I mean, we have the technology to advance, but why haven't we used it?
Okay, I was going to ask about that, because sometimes when people bring up like ecological problems, or just anything that they appeal to more advanced technology. And I was going to add, like, maybe I feel like in some cases there's just a point where the technology is as advanced as it physically can be with what we have right now. So you just mentioned, I was going to ask you about that, and you just mentioned we actually do have the ability to advance that away from eggs, but aren't. Yes. Feel free to speculate.
Well, again, I have a feeling it has to do more with money than anything else. There's something driving that to not advance to the other methods, and from everything that I could find in doing the research on it, I could not find that it was costing more to create the vaccine using the other methods, which was a first assumption that, oh, well, maybe this is just way too expensive way to do this, that it's not feasible. But no, it seems like it's in line at a comparable cost to do it with the newer methods than it is using the eggs. So what else is there driving that?
So when I think about it, I think they must need a biological foundation, like biological material foundation to create the thing.
Yes.
And so you're saying that they don't necessarily need that biological aspect of the thing to create a vaccine.
Well, they don't need the egg. They have used cells from certain insects. They have used cells from genetic modification, things like that, which is a whole nother ball of wax that could get into some scary issues down the line with genetics. But they have other methods that they are using mammal cells, and they have not specified exactly what those mammal cells are, but the mammal cells that they're creating the vaccine off of doesn't use any of the egg base. So with a more sufficient supply of mammal cells,
you think there's a more sustainable option?
yes.
Or there is a more sustainable option, we just aren't using
We're
it.
not using it.
Kind of like how the first light bulbs could burn for 100 years, and the modern ones are almost designed to burn out sooner.
We don't want them to last 100 years because nobody else needs to buy them then.
You only buy one set of light bulbs for your entire life.
So that also makes me question, are these vaccines any better using the newer methods? Do they work longer? Is there long-term effects to them? Are they even better than using the egg-based? And then that comes into question, well, if this is the better way using the mammal cells, but we don't need to take them for 10 years apart, well, we can't sell as many then, which is a whole problem for Big Pharma.
Well, they wouldn't be able to induce autism anymore. I think that would be a problem. Sorry. Is that too much?
Which we need to sell medication for that.
Well, they on a side note that they have, I think recently just kind of put out a couple of studies on autism, mold-induced autism, where they essentially cured autism through like some antibodies to get the mold out of their system, which is, I don't know, crazy to me. I mean, at least we're making headway in some direction.
We have, especially in our biomedical research labs, I think we have so many amazing things out there that is not available to the public and not going to be made available to the public, which I'm also hoping that maybe with RFK Jr.'s leadership that some things will change with that, because if we don't put those medicines out there that can actually cure something, that means we're only treating it, which is exactly what we've been doing for literally decades. We're not curing things, we're treating things, because that means they don't come back if they're cured, which means they're not paying for it repeatedly.
I have a question about that, because like I kind of mentioned at the beginning of the show, I have not done the deep dive on this sort of medical conspiracy theories. Like I was well-versed in COVID because I lived through it, but this kind of like decades-long problem going back. I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a second. I hear a lot like, oh, they have the cure for cancer, but you make more money treating cancer with chemotherapy than you do with just curing it with a vaccine that costs $15 to manufacture. So my question is, though, at some point we run into the problem where why aren't other advanced nations and economies able to replicate? Like, does China and Russia have the same idea where they've discovered the cure for cancer but are gatekeeping it for the same reasons? Or is it possible that they haven't discovered it yet, or the cure for cancer just doesn't exist?
Well, I can't speak to cancer specifically, but I had just seen an article where Russia has found a major medical breakthrough in curing one of the big diseases, and I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but that it actually did clinically cure the issue. So I'm also watching to see what Russia is going to do with that, because they have actually announced that they have an actual cure versus a treatment. So if they are putting things out there, or going to start putting things out there, we may see some huge advancements coming worldwide. I think for years, a lot of the direction that has not been put out, because we have been so heavily involved with the National Institute on Health and the World Health Order, I think there was a lot of things that have been nailed down and contained that have not been put out to the world, especially because of funding. A lot of funding has come through the United States and Big Pharma and other places, that they have put a lid on things very quickly that they did not want out there. And who is actually calling the shots through these organizations, which it sounds like we're going to be pulling out of them permanently under the Trump administration and RFK, that we may get rid of these, because we have spent billions upon billions upon billions of dollars funding these places, and no more advancements are being made than what we had in 1980.
Right.
Well, I mean, a lot of this is going back to the funding, whether that's the eggs, whether that's the COVID shots, whether that's flu, whether that's talking about curing cancer. A lot of it is going back to the money. On a side note, Biden did say he was going to cure cancer. We don't yet have a cure for cancer, and it's been a 2 week.
Which, interestingly enough, our treatment for that, or one of the treatments for that through chemotherapy, actually came in the discovery through using mustard gas in World War II.
Nice. Maybe we should increase our chemical warfare.
That's how old that idea and founding of, oh, well, this is actually killing off cells, cancer cells, and also good cells. It was used originally through mustard gas during World War II, and they had discovered some effects of that and modified it slightly to use for chemotherapy. So we're talking about another 70 to 80-year-old treatment method that we have not advanced on.
Yep, back when we were able to experiment chemically.
Yeah,
made progress, guys. But yeah, we talk about the economic aspects of all this. A big thing is a crypto, and I know some of the RFK being talking about his confirmation. I do think he'll get confirmed today. Kind of tanked some of the stock market, and then people are starting to question what's happening to Bitcoin and crypto, and I don't know.
Yeah,
what the future is.
Interesting factor, and I did see the market did take a bit of a hit, but I'm glad to see. I think it's going to level out again. I think people had a knee-jerk reaction for a moment, but it's also going to affect some of these companies, especially with Big Pharma, which has always done well. I was working with investments. That was always one of the things that was ingrained. Always try to find your baseline investments for long-term solutions, utilities being one of them, because everybody needs some kind of utilities. Pharmaceuticals, because everybody needs some kind of medicine ongoing. That was always an investment that you could guarantee is going to have some kind of return. So now we may see some big changes coming there, and Big Pharma is not going to be happy about it, because there's a lot of things that we could actually change, and it's going to make a difference to their bottom line, but it's also going to make a huge impact for the better for our health insurance and health care systems when we don't have Big Pharma leading the pack and dictating the prices and controlling everything. We may actually start to see people getting the care they need, and it's not going to cost our seniors and young adults and children everything they have to pay for it.
Now, Josh, you got a take on crypto, don't you? Are you pro crypto, anti crypto, or you just kind of stay away from it a little bit?
I'm pro crypto, but with all things, I'm afraid that it's as good as it's ever going to get right now. Which, again, I don't want to jump the gun on the topic here, but we're basically talking about possibly the governments implementing their own cryptocurrency. And what I'm more afraid of than anything, because right now, crypto's great for free trade, for, moving money around, for investing and whatnot. But what scares me about the government kind of dipping their toe in that water is the eventual run towards regulation, to where then it won't be as free as it is. And the government, it'll basically, cryptocurrency will be assimilated into the dollar.
So you're looking at the Fed gaining control of, let's call it Fed coin. I think that's what they were floating a few years ago. The Federal Reserve gaining control of that, and then it's virtually a U.S. dollar. It's just a digital dollar.
Right, exactly.
I think that's something to be scared of. I think the regulations coming on crypto may force something in that direction. I know a lot of people that are extremely pro Bitcoin, decentralization, and everything like that. But
I am for it to an extent. I think it's a great investment, and people have done well if they're careful about how they're doing it or what they're getting into. I think if you can put a few dollars toward it and start off easy. I say to be cautious. Don't ever just put everything you have into any kind of investment. But I think it's well worth it, even just to hold on to, because of it being a worldwide accepted form of payment. I think you can actually leverage some things there if you're smart enough or use some common sense. I think you could see some definite gains there. But I also worry about that, and I've heard talks about our feds getting into a form of crypto or starting up one. So I'm anxious to see what our new Treasury Department and
what they have planned. I'm excited to see what they have planned too. Not good excited or bad excited, just excited. I mean, there's so much going on in the last 2 weeks. You never know what's going to happen.
It is an exciting time. I'm glad to see some kind of movement instead of being so repetitive and stuck in the same box as we have been for the last 100 years. And that's been the definition of insanity, is to constantly do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. And that's exactly what we have been doing for quite some time, expecting a different result, and we're not seeing that.
Yeah, we had a comment on here that says it's a scam. I think he's talking about crypto. There's a lot of this that is a scam. A lot of it's a little bit of a rug pull. We can talk about Hog Tua, but I mean, there's a lot of things that are scams. We could talk about Vivek rug pulling his entire pharma industry. Since we're on that topic, we create a cancer curing drug, not mustard gas, maybe so, but and hype it up to the point where we could just rug pull Americans' dollars and then just go run for president like everything's all fine and dandy.
That's another whole interesting topic there. We
not
talk
to change
about
the subject, but
we talk about the big pharma and collecting all this money and things. And right now, another interesting item is all the use of Ozempic and Wegovy. And now we're seeing a lot of cases coming back because it's been prescribed and used by people that should not actually be using it. It's a drug meant more for people that are obese with diabetes. It helps control the diabetes, but it also then helps them reduce their weight, which also will make them healthier if they are a diabetic. But the people that are getting the prescriptions are not actually diabetic or not severely obese. These are people that, I just want to look good for today. I got to make sure I'm within a certain weight range, and it's actually what you should be on an average or below that already. And now they're having severe side effects and long-term health issues. So how is that going to also play out? Because now the ones that have had severe health issues and health scares from this use, now they're going to have to be treated for another issue with their health. And it just keeps going in another whole cycle of well, you got sick from this. Now we're going to treat you with this. Well, now you're sick from that medication. Now we got to treat it with a whole nother one.
Yeah, I think I sent you a video maybe a week or two ago about one of the actresses coming off of a year-long stint of Ozempic, and she's basically her body was shutting down. And me and you did a podcast maybe it's about 6 months ago, kind of called it out and said the fallout from Ozempic and Wegovy are going to be astronomical. I think we're starting to see that.
Let me ask about that, because I'm a larger person and I'm currently on a weight loss journey, as they say. But Ozempic and Mounjaro, that's something I've shied away from because I did a little bit of research on it, and from what I found, like the before and after pictures look weird. People that lose weight on Ozempic that aren't diabetic, I couldn't even tell you what it is, but there's just something off about it. And you mentioned that there are, like, I kind of figured since it's a newer drug, it would take time to kind of see the long-term effects, but it sounds like you kind of already have an idea. So what are those?
Yeah, I mean, it's a number of side effects and long-term physical detriments to your health. It can lead to pancreatic problems, kidney problems. The smaller ones are going to be like headache, diarrhea, things that are short term and not as severe. But when you're talking about having long term, and that actress that we actually had chatted about has now, and she's in her early 20s, mid 20s, and has severe osteoporosis and osteopenia. As a result, it has debilitated her bones to the point where she will not get that stability back in her bones because of this. It had such a side effect to her, which is insane because she now has the bones of like a 75-year-old.
Whoa.
Yeah, I think she had it was osteoporosis what she had, or some derivation of that, and she was also mentioning about her body just shutting down from not maybe it just starved her to death. It's like induced anorexia, from what I could tell, and it shuts down the GI system. Also,
you can actually have your stomach actually literally shut down from processing any of the nutrients or foods that you're taking in. It will actually seize and stop functioning, which is another one of the side effects from these medications. So very interestingly that people are still pushing forward. And of course, every single day we see those ads being put in magazines, on television, social media, all over the place you need to start using Ozempic. You need to start using Wegovy.
That's where the money is, though.
That's absolutely where the money is.
That's where we follow the money. And, at some point, instead of it being on a U.S. dollar, it's going to be on a digital coin, whatever that coin is, whether it's Ethereum or Bitcoin or XRP was a big one now.
Fedcoin.
There's a different one that has been pushed out, I think, especially in the last 2 weeks, called Trump coin.
Man, I wish I got in on that.
Let's go for it.
That thing went to the
Portnoy
moon
bragging.
and then stabilized a little bit. I mean, is that a long-term thing? Was that just to gain funding? I mean, was Trump looking for a little bit of money to kind of get ahead and
I think he would have actually enough supporters that would buy into it, whether or not it's a long-term investment. I think just buying the support for Trump, I think people would do it.
Well, for sure, he's a salesman. We all know that. He's a salesman. That's why he's buying Greenland, and he got a free Palestine. Yesterday?
The Gaza Marriott.
Yeah, he just
hotel.
free Palestine. I'll take that. Yep, I'll take a free one.
Interesting enough, what's some of the thoughts, because I've had my own thoughts with the cryptocurrency or any form of it, and how that will actually affect our global economics, which I can see long term how it may be a good thing or may not be a good thing. It could have some effects as well. But as a sideline on personal feelings about that, it has been talked about in the Bible about one world currency. So what's some thoughts or feeling if we head toward a global coin or currency?
I don't know. I'm really cautious about talking about the end times. I used to speculate a lot about that, but I mean the possibility is there. I think it's been there for a long time. I mean the potential of the dollar to be a central currency is pretty high. I mean maybe not so much since it's not on the gold standard anymore, but the possibility of a Bitcoin or Fedcoin or whoever else wants to run this thing, whatever BRICS system is operating on, I think there's a possibility of that being there. I mean, the entire world is connected right now through the internet. So if somebody really, really wanted to create a Fed coin and put tariffs on anything that is not processed through Fed coin, then, I mean, ready, set, go. What's stopping them?
Well, I'm kind of in the same camp as you, Zeb, where I think biblical prophecy is vague intentionally. If there was just a straightforward list of what's going to happen, then that would necessarily change what happens. And so I think we're all against Fedcoin for like the same political reasons. But if we're talking like end times prophecy, then we can come out, we can talk about it, we can, pound our fists and stomp our feet all the live long day, but it's inevitable. And I do think what's scary about it is I think that the progress of technology is inevitable. There is going to be a one world currency one day simply because of, I don't think it's because the nations are going to all come together, but that might end up happening through the one world currency because of the very nature of the internet and internet-based money like Bitcoin.
We will definitely advance to it. It's not going to be if it ever happens. It will be when it happens. And, I mean, we're not going back in technology ever again. We are always going to advance. We're not going to go back to 1900 and let me have my little bitty mason jar and I'm going to put my few pennies in there and this is my savings account. I mean,
I don't know. Some people think we are. Some people think we're, Trump's burning down the entire system and the world's coming to an end. We're all going to be living in caves next year.
It's not. We are going to advance, but the question is with that, and I think some of that when talking about the end times or the one world currency and how that would be a fulfilled prophecy, so to speak, I think the idea or theory of that, who will actually control that, and that comes into a matter of whoever controls whatever currency is going to be used worldwide or globally is also going to be the ones in power. Are they going to use it for the good, or are they going to hold everybody else under the thumb with that?
Well, if I had to make an absolutely wild guess, I would say it would fall under some type of federation, whether that's EU, NATO, UN, whoever. But I mean, Trump just pulled out of UN. I mean,
which we should have
a long time ago. I mean, NATO should be disbanded, but I think it's going to come from a federation itself and not necessarily America, which, I mean, you could argue we're an empire. I would. So, I mean, we're colonizing Israel right now. So, ready, set, go at this point. I mean, I think we hit all the wave tops, man. I mean, is there anything that we kind of skipped over that you want to touch on again?
Well, I'm just looking forward to see what is going to actually come in this administration. I'm not fearful, and I see a lot of fear mongering still going on. I see a lot of news and social media places that just keep putting things out there every day that, we're all going to be basically enslaved under this regime. Everybody's going to be deported. Everything's going to collapse. We're now going to be doomed as America. We're never going to be able to rise up or do anything. And that's not the case. We are actually having to undo all the bad policies that have been going on for so long to make a step forward, because we've been so shackled with this that we couldn't move anymore.
Well, I think it's just blowing people's minds how fast this administration is moving, and I think that's a benefit to the administration itself, because they can't catch up. All they could say is always breaking things. But as fast as he's breaking them, they're fixing themselves. I mean, Mexico's sending their National Guard to the border. Canada's sending their National Guard to the border. We're stopping fentanyl. We're fighting drug cartels without even having to lift a finger, simply off of threats of tariffs. I think he's making a lot of moves. There's been, again, last night he said we were going to occupy Gaza militarily, and that got a lot of backlash across the board. But
how do y'all feel about that?
here's how I feel about it. I think there's a lot of paper hands running around Twitter. A lot of people were, and Nick Fuentes included, you know, he's right about a lot, but I think he's wrong on some of these issues. And a lot of people kind of followed his lead on this. Is the press conference that Trump had with Netanyahu was a little bit questionable, a little suspect. I mean, Trump's never shied away from his, you could call it support for Israel. But I think the presence of U.S. military, U.S. personnel in Gaza, it simply stops the war in its tracks indefinitely. You can't carpet bomb anymore. You can't go in and do unhumane things to the Gazans. Now, if we're going to relocate them, that's fine. You know, I'm not opposed or in favor of it. It just is a thing. Now, we also shouldn't just give over Gaza to Israel once it happens. I mean, we should retain colonization of that, and I mean, arguably move into Israel and take Jerusalem as a Christian state. Josh?
I'm down with that in theory, and we've talked about this before on other shows, like Outside the Overton, where I'm not in principle against foreign aid. I'm not in principle against even occupying other countries. What concerns me about this is that the Trump and like the United States government for decades, and even the Trump administration, has not shown an ability to restrain Israel, has not shown an ability to kind of play hardball with them when it's necessary. And I think it is extremely necessary after October 7th. There's been many instances where they've agreed to things and reneged on the agreements and whatnot. So I think us occupying areas of the Middle East, again, is not incorrect in principle. What concerns me, though, is if there's American troops over there, there is the potential for a false flag event. And in that case, because of the lack of ability to restrain Israel, we will then be, I feel, forced into another war that we do not want to be a part of. That's my concern.
That's actually, and I can follow that. It's an interesting idea. I don't know if I 100% agree with that, and I hope we never have to see that actually come out to play, because that would not be well. But right now, I think Israel would, at least to some extent, keep things under control for a certain level. I don't think they had a great relationship with our past presidency or that administration. So I think they thought that, you know, at this moment, since there is no leadership coming from the United States to say otherwise, we're just going to do what we feel like doing at this moment and see how this plays out. But I think now things, because under the Trump administration and with the relationship they have, I think it will come to terms a little stiffer now than it has in the past. I think there will be some things put in place if we go there, if we colonize, if we're going to stay there, we're going to have some agreements. And if you get out of line, here's what's going to be the consequence from that.
Josh, you don't want to give a little bit of leeway to Donald Trump with all these wins lately? Give him a little bit of time to figure this thing out. Let it sit for a second before we start saying bad idea.
Here, I'm not trying to say I'm not as doom and gloomy as Nick Fuentes is on this administration so far.
A lot of the red pillars across the board. I mean, they were last night when it dropped. Last night when the videos dropped of him saying that he was going to occupy Gaza, and we can kind of get into Netanyahu's body language on that video. I don't know if you've seen it.
I've seen parts of it.
Have you seen the video?
I've not seen the video.
Okay, I'll have to show you the body language. But basically, when he announced that we're going to occupy Gaza and we're going to rebuild, he was very uncomfortable, like to the point of he didn't know that was going to happen.
Okay,
I think it's a negotiation tactic.
I think so too, and that's what I wanted to say. Is I don't take Trump for his. I don't take him at his word in this. I think that he's saying to propose something like that in light of dismantling U.S. aid is totally contradictory. It's insane. It's an insane project to undertake. Like we're going to set up basically Atlantic City or the Las Vegas Strip in a war-torn part of the Middle East. That's a bit much. But I think you're right. I think that is a ploy. It's an attention grab, which Trump is great at. And it's to do exactly what you said. It's to kind of almost back Bibi Netanyahu into a corner too. Kind of setting up, here's what we talked about when it has nothing to do with what they talked about at all. Now, that being said, I want to clarify because I do think that these wins are wins, but they're not victories. A victory means like
the war is over.
Yeah. The war is over. There's a border wall. There will never be another illegal immigrant again, and if there is, they'll be apprehended. That being said, it's the first 2 weeks. So it's not like
that's so crazy
I can't
to
be
me.
down on him.
There's so much that's happened in 2 weeks. It's
right. So
mind-blowing.
I can't be like Trump's not getting it done. It's been 2 weeks, but we do have to pace ourselves. We can't get too high on our own supply.
Now y'all had a historian, I guess you call him professor of history, on the show,
right?
On your show this morning or yesterday morning.
Yesterday.
And he was asked basically the question of, has any president ever come out swinging this hard? What was his response on that?
I was answering a lot of phone calls during his segment. He brought up, they talked a little bit, to my recollection, they talked a lot about Nixon, and they got kind of into the minutia of his administration. And basically, Trump, I think in this regard, it's not as revolutionary as maybe people right now think it is. There's definitely been presidents in the past that have done it before, but in terms of the modern era, you know, there's political eras, and of the last 15, 20 years, it feels like everything is going at a snail's pace. So definitely, if you factor that, if you just go by the American political system of the past 2 decades, he is definitely an outlier in that regard.
Yeah.
Trump, I mean.
I'm excited. It's a good outlier.
Yeah. I think he is actually taking on the challenges that our founding fathers had seen and having to break down things to rebuild in a much better way. So I'm looking forward to that. And yes, I'm equating Trump with one of our founding fathers because we've gotten away from a lot of our things that we started this country on and has changed into this weird system over the hundreds of years.
I mean, we are equating them to founding fathers almost at this point, but I think there's a weird new America that's happening. If Doge continues on with what they're doing, they're going to uproot almost the entirety of the American system as we know it. All of the as one of our mutuals would like to put it, the load-bearing walls of the system are coming down. Some of those load-bearing walls just happen to be money laundering. So,
which I'm looking forward to all of that. I want to see some of these changes actually implemented. You know, we've had decades upon decades of waste and corruption through every system almost that has been implemented. It's time to gut it and start over. And if that's what it takes, bring those walls down, so be it. I know there's going to be a lot of people that are unhappy from that, but it needs to happen. It needs to change. We can't keep going the same way we have been doing it. You know, it has been since the Baines-Johnson era when a lot of programs were implemented and not for the good. They were done for devious reasons, making it to the public perception that, oh no, this is going to be so much better for you. We're going to fight poverty. We're going to do all these things. We're going to implement all these programs, and it has turned into an absolute cluster that needs to be done away with.
Well, Johnson did do Social Security, didn't he? Was that Johnson?
No,
Was that
Social
Carter?
Security came out under RFD
Oh, FDR.
or FDR.
Yeah,
yes, sorry.
I was like, huh?
RFK.
RFK.
FDR.
Yeah, there's
He's
a
the
lot
one
of
that
systems
actually
that need to be
implemented
uprooted.
that. But Social Security was actually only meant to last a short period of time during the Depression era, and then it was supposed to end. It was not actually supposed to be carried on all these
Oopsie
years.
daisy, we created a pyramid scheme that we can't end.
That's and now that we can't fund anymore.
That point is kind of where I fall in line with the boomers, which is, I'm not a anti-big government guy, but the post-World War II consensus like we talk about, it does seem like everything that's supposed to be temporary, everything that seems good at the time, like the Patriot Act. Oh, this is temporary because we're having this terrorism problem. Indefinite. And that's not going away anytime soon. Social Security, another perfect example.
Well, it's like the issues is you can't fire people at the federal government. You can't really rescind any bills or laws or anything easily, and so therefore why try? And so they just stay and they continue and they drain, and then you have to appoint a DOGE, a Department of Government Efficiency, to gut everything, and that's what we're seeing.
And that's exactly what needs to happen. It needs to go from the top down to find all the places that have been a constant drain and a waste and start eliminating them. If we have to start fresh with a different program, so be it. But we need to eliminate these programs that are absolutely broken that you are not going to fix. And Social Security, Medicare being one of them, it was a great idea. It was a good, necessary thing when it was started. But over the years, it has evolved into something that turned into a monster that you cannot sustain indefinitely the way it's going.
Somebody said on Twitter, they said Elon's just coming in and canceling all the subscriptions that we forgot to cancel over the years. Which I thought was pretty
That's an
clever.
excellent
It's like
analogy.
we got Netflix and Disney Plus and Hulu and Prime Video. We're just canceling all these subscriptions that we just forgotten about, or that have been smuggled into the system under the radar under a different name of not $7.99, but more like a couple billion dollars here and there.
It adds up to a tremendous amount of money.
Real quick, we talked about in Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. You work in that sector. What would it look like if we, I'm not going to say gut the system, but if we go into these hospitals and look into how they're funded, how they're coding things, and it turns out that they're just essentially making up office visits, making up different codes or upcoding to collect more money. I know insurance companies in general pay out about 60% of what the billing is, and so they upcode to collect more money. What would that look like if we, if we gut the system?
Well, and it's going to have to be a drastic change across the entire healthcare system. Right now, the way it has been working, it's not working. We put patches on things and make it look pretty, but it has not been working. Obviously, Medicare and Medicaid, I mean, they're basically broke. They don't have the funding, but yet we have the senior citizens going to the doctors, getting 101 prescriptions that they can't pay for, but it's using the insurance. Insurance will only pay for so much of that. So the hospitals or the doctors figure, well, if I can only make so much off of this, I need to add this, this, and this onto the bill to make it equate to the dollars that we actually need to sustain what we're doing here. It turns into a vicious cycle, unfortunately, and nobody is winning except the ones that are in the end receiving the money.
How much? I mean, there's a lot of speculation going on here, and I'm sure you don't know. But let's say a larger hospital, or just hospitals in general. How much, in general, is upcoding, and how much would it, if we looked at it, how many made up office visits do you think there are?
As far as office visits, it's hard to say depending on what they're actually doing or treating or how they're actually working that. but that equates into millions of dollars every year, literally millions of dollars. So, I mean, it's not, oh, well, we can squeeze in $100,000 here or there. No, this is turning into millions upon millions of dollars for a healthcare system or a hospital system that is making, you figure if they have 5,000 patients per day in a particular hospital, how much of that is the real billing versus anything else that is added on there or done as an extra? Well, we need to just run this test. Well, what is that test actually doing in relation to this? But you're tacking that on as a cost. I mean, that adds up to enormous amounts of money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what would the insurance industry look like, or what would they have to do? Because insurance is kind of based on the states and state regulations, and then you have state insurance, at least on the health side. If we remove, because Medicaid, Medicare, federal, if we remove that, what adjustments would have to be made? Is it even possible to? I mean, it's not even possible to remove it entirely. It would just have to be reformed and funded another way, right?
I think it does need to be severely reformed. Honestly, it would be nicer if the states had more leeway and had their own individual state program versus the federal program. I think there could be a lot more control over things, and you can actually see and watch what's actually happening there on a much smaller scale than as a nationwide scale. If each state is responsible for their own health care, they can look and see what is actually happening within that state and make those adjustments, not only for the cost of it, but also health-wise. If you have a state that is a high diabetic rate, we'll use that as an example. Okay, what is the factors leading up to that? Why is there so many cases, and why are we spending so much money on a diabetic, but the state next to us does not have that?
Well, that's just how insurance works in general.
That's
No, I don't really get in car crashes that much, but some people do.
well,
and
that's
they like to
insurance.
sue.
It is a collective. You pay a premium in as a collective.
Well, we found out with
pool.
the Las Vegas fires recently. We found out with I guess not so much in North Carolina because they kind of excluded that on the flood, but I don't know, man. There's so much that needs to be done. We're moving fast as we can. I don't know if we can get there.
We will get there. It's going to take some time, but I think as fast as we are moving, it's not going to take as long as people thought it would.
Yeah, it's going quick.
I hope so. And before we wrap up, it kind of feels like we're about to wrap up. I did have a guilty pleasure question, harkening back to a topic we brought up earlier. Speculating, what do you think is the most advanced medical breakthrough that is being kept from us?
Ooh, I think there's actually several. I think there is some. I can't say completely for a cure for cancer in general, but I think to some level there are cures for certain types that are actually available that are not necessarily being readily put out there. I think there's also some things, especially since there was so much done over the past 10, 15 years with stem cell research. I think there's very much things for heart disease that could probably be cured, but are not at this moment. Where's the research, or where has that gone? And I actually just had seen some articles, especially when it comes to who was tied to Dr. Fauci and research labs and different areas where huge amounts of funding had been funneled, and they did actually make some amazing breakthroughs, but where is the actual research and the results from all of it? So now I'm questioning also, well, you did all this research, it was paid for, and there have been all these studies and clinical trials and things that were proven, but where are the end results and where is the actual product?
I guess the question I have too is, Ellison came out a while back, kind of lobbying. Well, a while back, like a week ago, kind of lobbying for AI is going to cure cancer.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very questionable push. Is it possible? I mean, I don't know. Where does that land? Can AI cure cancer? I know it can, recognize different people based on almost a blurred image of an X-ray. It can do a lot of things that we can't. Is cure cancer one of those?
Not being a
That might be an AI
expert,
question. That might be an AI
I
question,
find that
not a
very
cure cancer
interesting.
question.
I think there is a possibility, at least to advance with AI, that you will be able to find and pinpoint before it actually happens, that you will know if you have the markers and the precursors that you are going to have this type of cancer within this many years, maybe a year or 2 years, so you can actually pre-plan what type of treatment may be necessary before it actually takes place to stop it. So maybe that's how they might be looking at the AI cure. But I think it will come to the point where we advance that we will know way ahead of time if we're going to have something and what it is.
Yeah, if AI is not a hand, I think it's very much on its way very soon. Well, David, I want to thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Giving
It's
us some
been
expert
a great
insight.
time, and I enjoy the conversation and the different ideas and being able to think things out, which I've said in the past when talking with you. I love the conversation and dialogue because I want people to stop and start questioning things. Start thinking for yourself. Think outside the box. Don't rely on just what you're told automatically from social media or news sources. Begin to actually question what they're actually telling you and think it through. Use actual logic.
Yeah. Like, why is the egg prices going up and not
And why
chicken
not
prices?
chicken? Exactly.
That's the question of the day. Why are egg prices going up, not chicken? David, thank you for coming on. A little bit of RFK talk, a little bit of vax, a little bit of eggs, flu. We covered what? Economic factors, crypto, all of it,
yep.
cancer, cure cancer. We did it all.
We solved the world's problems today.
We did. If you're still around, consider liking this and subscribing. We got a lot more coming. I'm gonna try to do it. I'm gonna try to do a daily live show. So we'll see how that goes. Might be something different every day. I know I got Josh here. We'll do the Overton window and
outside the Overton.
outside the Overton window. You know why I named it outside the Overton window? I mean, it's obviously we're going to talk about ideas outside of the Overton window given, but I wanted to, and I told Josh this the other day. I was like, I want to slide in defenestrate as much as I can into that. You know what defenestrate means?
I think it's going to be a pretty awesome venture. Let's.
See
when are you starting?
We've got what two episodes in?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But no, I'm gonna slide defenestrate in there. Defenestrate is when you throw someone outside of a window from a building. So we're gonna defenestrate ideas outside of the norm. But no, thank you for coming on, David. Thank you for having a good conversation with us.
Thank you so much.
Anything you want to toss out there before we go, Josh?
Hey, I asked my guilty pleasure question. I'm satisfied.
That was a good question, dude.
That was a great question.
We do a little clip.
Might have you on here.
Yeah.
Another time with some more good questions. But yeah, again, thank you for coming on. Thank you for watching, whoever's still sticking around. And we will see you maybe tomorrow.
Thanks so much.